What is up, everybody? So Guild Wars 2, or ArenaNet rather, released a blog post today going over the future of Guild Wars 2, which is kind of funny because another game that I play called Destiny 2, I'm sure you guys probably know of it, also did the same thing, which is kind of awesome. But yeah, so Guild Wars 2, I want to give a little bit of a backstory behind, how long I've been playing the game, my experience with it. I got into it in April of 2020. That's when I really got into it. I did play it every really since 2016 on and off, trying to get into it. I only ever got to like level 20 or 30, but after that, in April 2020, when Destiny 2 was not looking too good, I managed to really get into Guild Wars 2, and it has been my main game for almost 3 years now. I have over 2,000 hours in it. It's truly a phenomenal game, and I'm rarely, a lot of the times on this channel, I like to be really like kind of lighthearted and crack a lot of immature jokes and just kind of be myself, right? That's how I am, you know? I want to take a moment here and be serious because I want to preface this before I get into things because I'm going to seem like a negative Nancy throughout this entire video, okay? But it's because I'm really passionate about this game. And I know that's kind of like a fucking meme to say, right? But I'm really passionate about this game. And the past 3 years have been some of the worst times of my entire life. I have had a awful time. I've said this kinda, but I've never really told you guys or even my friends how bad it's actually been. My mental health has taken a fucking plunge the past 3 years, and as someone who's I've been mentally ill since I was 9. Okay, that's when we really knew that I actually was. When I was having panic attacks and anxiety attacks about it raining outside. It's been a rough time for me mentally throughout my entire life. But the past 3 years have been awful. They've been truly terrible. And Guild Wars 2 has been, I would say that and my friends have been the primary thing that have gotten me through these years and have made it a lot fucking better than it really should have been. It wasn't because of COVID. It was because of some other circumstances that I don't really feel like it's really worth going into here. But I just want to say that Guild Wars, I can never repay ArenaNet for what they have done for me. They have like reasonably at least. If I like cured cancer or some shit, I feel like okay, well shit. That's my goddamn it. We're trying to keep it serious. Seriously though, this game has improved my life and it's changed it. I love this game. I adore it with all of my heart. This is my favorite piece of media to ever be put out. My favorite piece of art of all time. This is fucking fantastic. It really is just another level of amazing for me, and I just adore this game with all of my fucking heart. I want to get that out of the way right away. This is not something where I am just a blind hater or some shit. I fucking love this game. ArenaNet is a phenomenal company. They have truly made a special piece of work here, and they've done a great job with the game. Most of its life cycle. We don't talk about Icebrew Saga, but yeah, they did a phenomenal job. So yeah, I wanted to get that out of the way, and we're gonna get back to that sort of lightheartedness here, but I wanted to get that serious part out of the way. And yeah, so they announced that basically the big announcement is that they're going to be changing the way they do expansions instead of having expansions sometimes and then doing the living world stuff in between. They're basically going to kill off the whole living world thing and then still do patches, so you don't have to worry about like having a whole year like we did this year. Besides Living World Season 1, but that was kind of, sort of shit we had before. Um, you know, that kind of shit going on. We don't really have to worry about that. There's going to be patches every few months with new story content, blah, 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 blah. It's basically going to be Living World just without the fucking name and hopefully better. It's looking like they're going to be doing it differently than what they did. So, you know what? I'm for that. The problem is, for me, is that it's looking like there's going to be yearly expansions. So these are going to be, of course, smaller expansions that are at a slightly reduced price tag. So I believe the expansions, the MSRP for them is like $30. They go from starting out at 30, so it's probably going to be dropped down to 25. Possibly 20. I don't know. I'm really surprised they're even dropping down the price in the first place, considering how everything is going in the world. But hey, I'll take it. This is a problem for me because I genuinely think MMOs, like most things that I've seen, do not do yearly expansions well at all. The only game that I've ever seen that has done yearly expansions to a good extent is Destiny. And particularly the past few years of Destiny 2, they have done a fucking phenomenal job with just the sheer amount of content they put out. particularly with their seasonal model. Yeah, things can get a little repetitive, but seriously, they are putting out more content than any other live service game. If you look at live service games, right, the concept of it, Destiny, in my personal opinion, is in the leading forefront, and it's literally kicking the shit out of everybody else in terms of that live service format. Almost everybody has completely failed at it, and Bungie has really succeeded in so many goddamn ways. It's crazy. And it's looking like they're going more for that kind of thing that Elder Scrolls Online does, where there's like yearly expansions. And, for people that are outside of the ESO sphere, right, this might seem like a good thing. But if you play ESO, this is already worrying. Like, you hear this, the fact that we're going to be switching to yearly expansions, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay. Now, am I saying they're going to be making the same mistake ZeniMax has done? No, in fact, ZeniMax is not really all hands on deck on ESO. They're making an entirely new MMO. So perhaps ArenaNet will have better success with this because of the fact that they probably are going to be much more involved in kind of all hands on deck mentality for expansions. But that in particular is not really entirely what I'm worried about. What I'm personally worried about is elite specs. Now I want to get this out of the way right away. Do I expect elite specs to come out every year? Fuck no. That is a awful expectation to have. With the amount of content they're already proposing that's coming out, this is already going to be a lot of stress on the team. I think bringing elite specs every year is not a sustainable model to do. You're going to have to compromise on a lot of the stuff they're proposing right now. In order to give us 9 elite specs every year. What I'm proposing and what I'm hoping for is that we get those elite specs every couple of years, similar to what we'd be getting, with if they were hopefully going to be doing expansions every couple of years. With getting the elite specs. That is my biggest concern because elite specs, when I think of Guild Wars 2 expansions, with the exceptions of Mounts and Path of Fire, the elite specs is what immediately pops up to mind for me. These are really awesome sandbox changing things that are really fantastic. And other games do this kind of thing too, right? Final Fantasy XIV adds 2 new classes every expansion, which is really huge. There's a lot of skills and a lot of things to go over, similar to what we see with the Elite specs in Guild Wars 2. They do a similar kind of thing in terms of just the sheer amount of shit there is to balance on these classes. It's pretty crazy. And yeah, I know we have 3 Elite specs, right? But it's like, these are the things that sell these expansions for me. Like, without elite specs, these expansions would be a hell of a lot worse, with exception with Path of Fire, than they are now. End of Dragons would be a lot worse for me if I didn't get Untamed and I didn't get these other elite specs that I love. I would have not enjoyed it even close to how much I ended up actually enjoying it. And that's a huge worry because they developed that for 2 fucking years almost. So it's sort of like, I'm really worried about this. If they're going to be abandoning new elite specs and going for like stuff that's really underwhelming to me, like, hey, you get a new weapon or something, that is going to be incredibly disappointing, especially as a ranger main. I have wanted a pet-focused elite specialization, a proper pet-focused elite specialization, ever since I started maining ranger in December of 2020. That's something that I've wanted, and I was hoping for with Untamed, but Untamed really turned into something that kind of focuses on you and your pet, right? And as someone who's really, really wanted that kind of thing, knowing that I might never get that because they are maybe abandoning elite specs is really worrying for the longevity of the game for me. No new elite specs, barely any of these new sandbox items, right? That is a massively important thing in MMO expansions for me, is these new sandbox items to work with, right? Like Destiny, for instance, we always have at least like 40 new weapons. Sometimes we get new fucking subclasses. It's pretty crazy the amount of shit we get in that game. Every expansion, you could have the worst goddamn expansions. The loot is really what makes it worth it there for me. World of Warcraft now is going to be having more talents, I would assume, which is a huge thing. And of course, they usually have some sort of systems that are really engaging and fun. For me personally, for a lot of the community, they're never really like artifact weapons and shit like that. But this game, elite specs have been that kind of thing for me. And I'm just really worried that we're not going to be seeing stuff like that. And it's just, for me personally, having just new content, new maps or whatever is not enough to really make an expansion fun, because you play those maps for a little bit and then you're done with them. That's the reality of the situation. Those have a limited lifespan, where if you introduce these new sandbox elements like elite specs, for instance, that adds a lot of longevity that you get from that expansion. Like when I think of End of Dragons and I'm like that money was well worth it, it's because of the elite specs and the longevity that I've gotten from those elite specs. So that's kind of me personally. That is the huge worry for this. I don't really care about any of the other stuff. It really depends on how they execute it. But I am really just praying that they are not killing off elite specs and that we will be seeing them every 2 or 3 years or whatever. That is a huge thing. And I do believe if they are killing them off, that is going to be a huge fucking blow to a lot of the community and will definitely reduce the amount of hype for expansions and stuff like that. And it's going to be a real fucking disappointment. And as I said, I think it's a ridiculous expectation to expect 9 new elite specs every year. And I don't expect them to be splitting it up with 3 or whatever. And, because if they do 3, then the other 6 professions are going to be left in the fucking dust. So, and a lot of the times when these elite specs come out, most of them are, kind of blatantly overpowered. With the exception with Ender Dragons. We didn't really see that with Ender Dragons. But, yeah, like that's just kind of how shit is, right? So, yeah, I do think that they won't be doing that, and I can actually see them. Maybe it's just my anxiety disorder fucking, going to shit, and that's why I'm so worried about the elite specs here. But they really need to say something on this because this is a huge point of concern. And, they probably just don't even have their mind made up on it yet. They're probably still crunching the numbers, trying to work out how exactly they're going to be able to do that sort of thing. But there is no way in hell ArenaNet doesn't know that this is an integral part to what sells an expansion. And especially with them doing it every year now, where there's inevitably going to be less content within these. And yeah, there's been a lot of people saying that this is basically Icebrood Saga, but sort of renamed. Icebrood Saga, from a concept point, was actually a good fucking idea. I was like, yeah, this is cool. The thing is with Icebrood Saga is that we didn't get any elite specs, so to me that was just kind of lame. That's what really made things shit. And perhaps I'm alone in this sort of perspective of the whole sandbox sort of nature of these sort of expansions, right? But to me, that's what makes these sort of things worth it and what gives them longevity for me. That's what really matters with a lot of these things is like that longevity and getting the bang for your buck out of these, content updates and games that you have to pay for, is really adding a lot of longevity. And for me personally, and I do believe a lot of the other community, adding in new maps or, meta events or whatever is just not enough for like the long term. These sandbox items that change how you play the entire game, not just, hey, you're playing a little different in these couple maps of masteries or whatever, but elite specs change how you play the entire goddamn game. That's a huge thing. Also, another thing is that the PvP community and World vs. World community, the expansions rarely give them really anything at all. The big thing for them has been elite specs, and if you're taking away elite specs from the expansions, that's going to be a huge thing for those communities in particular, because that's probably going to kill off a lot of the fun. Like, it's going to kill off a lot of the longevity, and it's really going to suck. So yeah, those are my concerns with this sort of model going forward. They could definitely pull it off. ArenaNet is a good company. And despite being, under that NCSoft umbrella, they are pretty pro-consumer, I would say. And I have one of the better business models out there. But I'm just really worried that of this whole sandbox sort of model going forward with the elite specs and everything, that they're not going to be doing it. I know it's a lot of work and shit, but it's like you've established this thing for the past 8 years, and you can't just abandon it. Like that would be a ridiculous thing, and it'd be a huge blow to the game. And a lot of people are, this is the thing right now. A lot of people are really positive about it, and they're like, hey, this is a lot of work for them. I'd rather have new weapons or whatever. But you guys are going to be having a complete opposite point of view in a couple years. When we're really at a point where there is no big new sandbox shit and it's just weapons and stuff like that, you guys are going to want new elite specs. You guys are going to feel it, man. Like, I could already tell. So, yeah. We'll really see how this plan actually is in, like, maybe next year and the year after that. And we'll see how people really react to it. Because these guys can make promises all they want. And I love ArenaNet, but they have a history of kind of doing this thing where they change things up and then they just abandon it because they fucking failed with it. And that's kind of the thing with a lot of companies, right? They could talk about it, they could do it, but what really matters is the execution of whatever their promise is. So, yeah, that's going to cover the video. Those are my concerns with the future of Guild Wars 2, and concerns is a very understatement for me because I'm really I'm really worried, man. I'm really hoping they say something about elite specs because this has really done something to me for like the future of this game. I'm thankful for even having the time that I've had with this game, but yeah, I'm just really hoping they say something about this. And yeah, peace.